Hi, it's Jurgen Mantzke. What follows is the travelogue about a trip I took with my family to Alaska in 2016. I was joined by my wife Faith and my son Roden, who was 8 at the time. We started by flying from Seattle to Juneau. Juneau is the capital of Alaska, located on the Gastineau Channel in the Alaska Panhandle. It is a unique U.S. capital because there are no roads connecting it to the rest of the state. The Juneau icefield and other mountain ranges around it make it accessible by air or sea only. The Gastineau Channel was previously a fishing ground for the native Auk and Taku tribes. Juneau is the home of the state legislature and the offices of the governor and lieutenant governor. The United States purchased Alaska from the Russian Empire in 1869 for a mere $7.2 million. That's about 2 cents per acre. See, we got here on Saturday, right? Saturday morning at 7 from Seattle. We spent 3 nights at the Juneau Hotel. What was especially significant about this trip is that when I was 8, I lived on Kodiak Island, and it was the last time I saw my father. I wanted Roden to see where I lived when I was 8. Alaska became a U.S. territory in 1912 and the 49th state in 1959.
Oh, we got to go to the museum, the historical museum, which was really nice.
Something I didn't know is that the Japanese had actually, during World War II, had actually bombed one of the islands and taken one of the islands in the Aleutian Island chain. So when I was a kid on Kodiak, I remember my mom and my brother and I used to find like anti-aircraft guns and runways and things like that left from World War II.
World War II came to Alaska in June of 1942 with the Japanese bombing the U.S. naval base at Dutch Harbor and later occupying Kiska and Attu Islands. The occupation was over by August of 1943 with the Japanese abandoning their foothold when American and Canadian Allied forces advanced.
We went on a helicopter, landed on a glacier.
The helicopter ride was the highlight. That was incredible. The views that we got to see and being in the helicopter itself was mind-blowing. when we were flying, he told us that at one point, at one spot, if there wasn't a glacier, that the canyon that we were about to fly into was as deep as the Grand Canyon. That was a spot where I kind of freaked out because we dove into the canyon and that was a little stomach churning, but that was really fun.
Some things about the glacier weren't exactly as I thought they would be, because I thought that the ground would be more, it would look more like more white, and actually looked more clear-ish, kind of bluish white, and it was a little more cold than I thought it would be.
The depth of the ice field ranges from 790 to 4,590 feet. We took a walking excursion to the Mendenhall Glacier, but were unable to get very close to it on foot because it's been retreating due to climate change. It's retreated 1.7 miles since 1929.
Waiting for the ship that we're on, the Kennecott, to leave. It leaves at noon. Right now it's almost 11 o'clock and it sails at noon. So we have a little over an hour before it leaves. But they let us check into our cabin, which is like a little comfortable, cozy dorm room.
When the 1989 Exxon Valdez oil spill happened in the Prince William Sound, the Alaska Marine Highway used some of its ships as disaster management vessels. It was determined that another vessel would be necessary for better command and control in the case of another disaster. Using settlement money from Exxon, among other funding, the MV Kennecott was added to the fleet in 1998. The Kennecott is an ocean-certified vessel and makes a monthly trans-Gulf of Alaska voyage from Juneau to Kodiak.
So in 3 nights and almost 4 days, we're gonna dock in Kodiak Island.
We booked a 4-berth cabin with a window on the outgoing trip and an inner hull 4-berth cabin on the return voyage.
But I think that 3 nights, 4 days on the ship is going to be an adventure itself. We might see some things.
And we're also going to explore the ship because it's really big.
The Alaska Marine Highway System was created to connect communities in southeast Alaska with no road access. It's part of the National Highway System and receives federal highway funding. It connects Bellingham, Washington to Unalaska and Dutch Harbor and Aleutian Islands with 32 terminals between Washington, British Columbia, and Alaska.
I've learned that the boat was it was rockier than I thought it would be, and I had more of an experience than I thought I would have, and I didn't really think I would make some new friends.
One cool thing is we have seen some animals. We've seen some porpoises and maybe, I think, a whale for sure. Haven't seen kind of just the noses of them or the backs of them. Haven't seen them jump up or, show us their full tail or whatever. But we've definitely seen some animals. So that's been cool.
Yeah, I think what we saw was a humpback at first. I think because we saw the water spout, and I saw its back. Later, we definitely saw porpoises. The other thing that's interesting is that we saw some really tall mountains. I think one mountain we saw was 15,000 feet, and another mountain we saw was 18,000 feet, which we're at sea level. So watching these peaks is kind of mind-boggling to see how high they are. It's like 3 miles or something.
On the way across the Gulf of Alaska, we watched the St. Elias Mountains pass on the right of the Kennecott. The size of the mountains was stunning. It is the highest coastal range on Earth. An hour or so later, we saw the even more stunning Mount St. Elias, located on the border between Alaska and British Columbia. At an altitude of 18,008 feet, it juts horizontally to that altitude from the coast in a mere 10 miles.
The other interesting thing is that the sun sets at like 11, and I set my alarm to get up and go out on the ship and see what it would look like at 3 a.m. and at 3 a.m. it was basically dawn. So it's kind of messing with us, and even though we closed the curtains in our room, I think that the sun coming up at 3 and setting at 11 is messing with our sleeping patterns. So at 5 a.m. we pull into our next port, which is called Whittier, and I think we're there for 4 hours.
You tell the camera what your favorite food is.
Well, I mean, we've been able to have hamburgers. Roden likes the fish and chips, and they actually do a really good job. I wouldn't say 5-star quality, but better than McDonald's, right? Yeah, totally better than McDonald's.
Anyway, what was your favorite part of the trip so far, Papa?
I'm still just kind of digesting everything about the helicopter trip into the ice field, the 25 or so miles we traveled, and everything we saw. I'm still kind of overwhelmed by that. And I'm also really taking in the tranquility of an ocean voyage like this. Sleeping on a boat, eating on a boat, hanging out on a boat. And the only problem now is I'm running out of books to read, so not a bad problem to have.
We had a 4-hour port of call at Whittier. Whittier is part of Prince William Sound, where the Exxon Valdez oil spill occurred in 1989. The U.S. Army constructed the Camp Sullivan military facility near the Whittier Glacier during World War II. When the spur of the Alaska Railroad connecting Camp Sullivan was completed, It became the entrance for U.S. soldiers into Alaska. Oh, that's it. That's it. That's where that little road there, where that Jeep, that was it. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna turn it up. It's hot.
This is Saturday, July 2nd, and we've been in Kodiak. We spent one night in Kodiak at our hotel. We went around the town yesterday. We got off the boat yesterday morning really early. We got our car. We drove around a bit. Then we checked into the hotel. We went to some museums. The boat ride was fabulous. We were really relaxed. Didn't really feel like getting off the boat, but we did. And right now we're in Chediac Bay, and on the very beach where I lived for a while when I was a kid. I think I was 6 before we went to Chile. This very beach where my brother Andreas and myself explored, played, got in trouble. And now Rodin's playing, but not really getting in trouble.
Kodiak is just really incredibly beautiful, and it's been really neat to see all the places that Jurgen lived and grew up, spent some time.
Then we went and rented a car, and then went to get breakfast, and then we kind of just explored. Then we went to the hotel and checked into our room.
What did we do last night?
We watched the Angry Birds movie.
At the movie theater that Papa went to when he was a kid?
Yep.
What movie did I see there when I was a kid?
When he was a kid, he saw Star Wars something.
We also went to an aquarium yesterday morning where we saw a live king crab, sea anemones. It was a touch tank, right? We learned that the aquarium the whole Marine Research Center had been built with money from the settlement with the Exxon Valdez disaster. That was really cool.
The oil spill killed approximately 250,000 seabirds, nearly 3,000 sea otters, 300 harbor seals, 250 bald eagles, and up to 22 orcas.
So, did I miss anything? What else did we do?
We went to the Russian Museum. Went to the Russian Museum and saw, antiques from back when the Russians had colonized Kodiak.
So apparently, Russia had colonized Kodiak in the 1700s. So Kodiak originally was a Russian settlement, and it was actually Russian America, which is really weird to hear say, Russian America.
Yeah, and Peter the Great came to Kodiak as well.
Kodiak was the capital of Russian America in the 18th century. It was a hub for harvesting the pelts of the abundant sea otter in the area. The Russians named the settlement Pavlovsk, and it was the first permanent Russian settlement in North America. Later, the capital of Russian America was moved to Sitka in 1804. The Baranov Museum is housed in a structure which is the oldest of 4 surviving Russian buildings constructed when Alaska was a Russian territory.
It's Tuesday, July 5th, right? We've been traveling on that boat since Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. Yesterday, the 4th of July, we had 4th of July on the ship. Wow, this is Yakutat. There's a lot of bugs here, even at the dock. Sunday we went to church at the Kodiak Bible Chapel, where I'd also gone to school, where my mom came to Christ. And actually ran into some old friends, which is amazing. Particularly Art Zimmer, who we went to lunch with, who told lots of stories, and we shared some really good time with. So we went to the Army Museum at, Abercrombie State Park? Fort Abercrombie.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of bombs that I've never seen before, and knew that it even existed. And I also saw some other things like bunkers, and I saw a giant cannon. I saw some army guns, and they look pretty deadly. And other things like army vehicles.
This is the road that Andreas and I used to walk up and down. I don't know if we rode a bus to school because we could almost walk to school. I think here it is, right here. My gosh, look at that. This is just where the school was. Oh, it's big now. They added something. Oh, we had our Revolutionary War games here. It's the first time I ever saw a VCR. This is where we went. Andreas and I went to school here for a while and rode in. This place, yeah. And they showed us a documentary series on the Revolutionary War. And during recess, all the kids would run out into the forest and play Revolutionary War. And we got all muddy and stuff.
So my trip has been really fun. And right now on this boat, we're going to go to Juneau. And then we're going to go home. Pretty much every part of my trip right now and the other parts have been really fun. So I think that this trip is really worth it going here.
The church was nice. A lot of people were extremely nice. It was, your old-fashioned church service. But that was kind of cool. It was fun for Jurgen to see people that he had known back, when he was a kid.
A significant tourist attraction in Juneau, the Mount Roberts Tramway begins at the main cruise ship piers and ascends the slopes of Mount Roberts, about 1,800 feet to a main terminal. At the top are trails to other natural areas above the tram, retail shops, and exhibits about the natural history of the area. The tram began operation in 1996 and uses two 60-passenger gondolas. On our last day in Alaska, we made a delightful kayaking excursion out on Ayuk Bay to a small unnamed island occupied by at least 2 bald eagles.
Rodent, do you want to paddle? That's hard, Rodent.
All right, so we just kayaked out to some unnamed island. It probably is named in the channel maps, but we just rented some kayaks and went across Ayuk Bay to this island that is occupied by 2 eagles.
I remember a lot of the boat and the way here, the way to this island, and it's really exciting when you're riding either plane or a boat here.
The kayak trip that we are in the middle of right now is really, really awesome because the views are just gorgeous. And the whole trip, Alaska is just beautiful. I'm a little sad that it's going to be over because there's still so much to see and do, but we're, I think, excited to get home again. But I could easily say that I would come back to Alaska again because it's just incredible.
What was your favorite kind of seafood?
Probably the snow crab.
I'm definitely reliving some old experiences since this trip was connected to my childhood.